we should talk about Monaghan, we should talk about Galway. It is their clash in Salt Hill at 6 o'clock this Saturday. Conor McManus we mentioned there, but is there a sense around this whole game that it's a little bit like Belgium versus England, where Galway approach this game not knowing what to do? Is it better to win the game? Is it better to not lose the game but to play a weakened side, having focused on Dublin for the last 2.5 weeks?
I would go with you on that. Yeah, I think the Dublin focus. It's hard. I think it's all going to be down to the psyche of Walsh. You know, like, I mean, is he the type of fella who's, no, we keep the throttle down, you know, we keep winning every game, or is he the type of guy who can be, you know, pragmatic about it and a little bit smart about it and say, well, okay, I know there's certain individuals who are maybe flagging a little bit. I want them really, you know, get the engines completely recharged. And as you say, I also want to do my work, and I want us to do our pitch work based on potentially Dublin. And let's get really focused for that. Like, when would you rather meet Dublin? Semi-final or final?
Semi-final. Clearly, like, I mean, especially from a Galway perspective, isn't it? Like, given the fact that they haven't been there for 17 years, of course it's Dublin, so, and it's like your first opportunity to make that final for 17 years as well. So from your perspective, it's going to be white heat of battle stuff if you're close coming down the line. But I just feel that All-Ireland final has more of a meaning to Dublin going for 4 in a row, and they'll be able to eke that one out.
Massive. And not, I agree with you, because not on the other way. I don't think going for 4 in a row will heap pressure on Dublin. They will see that as a massive challenge for them. That's the psyche of that team. So that'll actually, I feel, will actually increase their level of performance, not hinder it. But whereas Galway going in, that hasn't been there since 2001, that is a big one. And I think that may actually, well, not, you know, I think if I was to play the margins, I think you would say that, well, Dublin will be, as I say, the performance level will increase, whereas Galway's level might not get it. Just with that pressure, what will that level of expectation, that level of pressure, that level of kind of, we haven't been here in so long, and you know, they haven't performed massively in Croke Park over the last number of years. Like, I mean, what was it? The first win was not so long ago, in a long time. So there is still that hoodoo of Croke Park. I personally, if I was them and if I was him, I would much rather meet Dublin in the semi-final.
Right, okay. Have we seen them at their best this year, Galway?
I think we've seen them at what exactly they need to do for everything. Like, I mean, I was genuinely worried for them in that first half against Kildare. I didn't think they had showed anything massively going forward. I thought they were being a little bit stifled. I didn't feel that I thought they were playing probably a little bit within themselves. Now, they did start to open up the shoulders in the second half. You know, definitely they did. Walsh came into it a bit more. You know, Coleman was relatively quiet, but they started to get their half-back line really firing. But I tell you what they do have. Like, I mean, I know Ewan McKenna was writing about it, and he's right. But listen, as winners, and I know he'll probably say, oh, well, that's typical, but you do need that little bit of a cutting edge. You know, he was mentioning the fact that, you know, they've certain fellas who won't let you away with anything. There's a lot of off-the-ball stuff going on. There's a lot of... Now, I do completely agree with him. If I'm pulling and dragging out of you and you turn around and hit me an elbow, next thing I'm going down, holding my face, I've no time for that at all. And that definitely needs to be stamped out. And people need to be keeping an eye on that. And not just umpires or linesmen. Because generally what happens is a linesman sees you reacting, not me. And you get the red. You know, kind of a la like Flynn. But they're doing a situation where they need to bring that. All the top teams have had that over the years, and Dublin have it. Like, Dublin don't let you get away with too much, and they certainly know where they need to put an X on a fella, and they go to do that. So they are bringing that, and they're not being. And people would have said, "Oh, sure, Galway are naive." That's what always would have been thrown at Galway the last number of years. You don't say that about this team.
No, definitely not. You do sense putting an X on the fella there, Conor McManus, and how they go about putting an X on him. And it seems like nobody would be surprised if Conor McManus is coming off the pitch there and he's kicked 3 points, 2 from frees, 1 from play or something like that. And you get the sense that if Conor McManus existed in the GAA world 15 years ago, he would have had a far better time than he did. Like, just seeing what he did in Clonus a couple of weeks ago, the fact that there was no sweeper played, no stringent defensive system, it was an attacking team they were up against. It's the exact opposite this weekend. And as like, he's in the argument for the best forward in the country, and still you wouldn't be surprised to see him come off with kind of a frustrating performance.
Like, I mean, if we were setting up this weekend, you're saying to yourself, you just look through all the statistics, you look through everything else, you look through the amount of times he's on the ball, you look through the amount of times he actually gets shots off. You're just saying, listen, we just tie him down. It's very simple.
Yeah. It is, and it's not even a matter of kind of man-to-man tying him down. It's a matter of having one man on him, and you can trust in the Kevin Walsh and Paddy Talley game plan of that zonal defence without the ball, which ultimately is in effect two sweepers.
Correct, and he has changed his game, and to be fair, they have changed him recently in that they used to look for him with that initial ball. They don't do that anymore. So, you know, people talk about McCarron and you know, they kind of say, so he essentially now works off the ball winner. So he'll come around on a loop, which is a little bit more difficult because it's very blatant as a foul. So if I'm winning it and you're coming around on a loop off me at speed the way he can, and especially amongst bodies, and he's so agile and he's got a great step, and he's also able to kick really, really quickly. Like he gets his shot off. As soon as he gets the ball, it's nearly gone. You know, so there's no real time. If you're coming around and I'm defending you, first of all, I can't have anything on you. I can't have hands on you. I can't be dragging you. So he's allowing himself to get in positions whereby you can't really do too many of the dark arts around him. You know, it's not this initial ball in, he gets it, he turns you. Most of the time, a lot of the time, it's now him working off other people, which is still difficult to stop. But the only way you stop that is you put a lot of people in that area. Yeah. And that's what Galway will do.
They sure will. There's a body of work at this point in terms of conversations that have been had about that Galway defence. Yep. Ultimately, the biggest incentive on that pitch in Salt Hill on Sunday is for Monaghan not to lose that game. So what's their plan going to be?
Like, I mean, it's tricky. They're going to have to try to, like, I mean, you're going to have to try to come up with something completely different, I feel, because I think if it is the McManus show, and if they're going in there, and O'Rourke is a sensible coach too, it isn't going to work for them. I think that they need to use him nearly as a foil. You know, they really do. They nearly have to hope that he chips in, he gets his frees, and that near the end of the game he can get something. But they really need, I think they need to use a power running game with the Hugheses. They need to go straight down through that middle. They need to really expose Bradshaw at 6. They need to try to drag him out.
See a weak link?
I think he's really excellent coming forward, but my problem is he has a sense now, because of the bodies around, that he will follow. So he'll go with you as an 11. He'll follow you anywhere. He'll follow you. He'll get dragged. And if you can drag him and get down through that middle, because you haven't really seen the Hugheses this year. Like, I mean, they haven't really set it like the way they have in previous years. You know, you'd see them barnstorming runs, coming through, getting goals. So I think that's an area whereby you know, that they could have a bit of success.
It's interesting. You would wonder, would somebody like Desi Moan at 11 do a job then for Monaghan, just to try and drag Gareth Bradshaw around the pitch and try and focus on him?
Correct. You know, I think I think you need to do something like that. Kelly is obviously, you know, that's a loss. So you need to maybe just, as I say, throw. I think if you think of Galway, what have Galway been built on? They've been built on that defensive structure. So you need to look at, instead of saying, well, yeah, they have a really good defensive, but I tell you what, we're going to beat that structure more so than anyone. You need to say, well, okay, that's their strength. So how can I take that strength away from them, and how can I at least reduce that strength? So you need to look at the Paddy Talley thing. I'm sure they've looked at, well, who has done well against a Paddy Talley style defence in the past, and how have they done it? Yeah, and then try to replicate it, and then try to fit the players that you have into those areas. And that, for one, you know, you should be a manager on.
Well, you know,
the Desi Moan thing could be a great idea.
I do enough on Football Manager. Burton Albion Champions League winners 2013-14. Who's going to win?
Galway.
Galway it is. So Galway not playing Dublin, despite the fact that they might have been focusing on them for the last couple of weeks. They'll get them in the final, though.
I just... yeah, like, I mean, also you have to think, right, you know, it's who will come in on the other side? Yeah, like that. We'll get to that in a moment. That is a tantalising fixture in Ballybuffet. Enda McGinley is standing by. Just before that, we've got a pair of tickets to give away on the show this morning to see Kaiser, the greatest football never to play football. We're giving them away. And last week we spoke to the documentary's producer, Tom Markham. You can catch that piece on youtube.com/AfterBall. We actually have a video of that right now. Check this out. It certainly seems to me it's important to point out the multiple different interviews, and I do wonder how long it took for you guys to actually
break down Kaiser, to actually peel away at a couple of layers to the point where we have this human at the end. And again, I'm not going to give away what happens, but we have a very different character and a very different relationship with Kaiser at the end. How long did that take?
It took nearly 2 years to do that. So when we met him, he's a very, very charismatic guy. He's obviously someone who can manipulate situations to get what he wants. So initially he thought it was the world according to Kaiser. And the beauty of this story is probably 50-60% of it's true. No one really knows the exact number, but you don't know which half is true. So, and you've got people that are contradicting each other the whole way through the story. So it's almost up to you to make up your own mind. And we've had the full perspective on that. People who believe nothing, people who believe everything, and that creates a lot of debate.
Yeah, Tom Markham there speaking about Kaiser, the greatest footballer to never play football, I should say. That's out in cinemas around Dublin at the moment. You can check out Tom Markham on Twitter. He's tweeted where it's available in Dublin and in different places as well. We do want to come back to the Gaelic Games, though. The Battle of Ballybofey is this Sunday at 3:30, and Enda McGinley joins us on the line. Good morning to you, Enda.
Morning all, Anthony.
So, in terms of this weekend, it's an interesting one. Like Moylesy was chatting about those Owen Mulligan comments on the Paddy Power website a little bit earlier on, and we've got to this level now where the Oma sidelines are becoming the most intriguing aspect of this championship. We've had Mickey Hart's comments, but now Mulligan is saying that the Oma dimensions were tightened for the sake of Ballybofey, that all they wanted to do was prepare for the dimensions of Ballybofey. Do you buy that?
No, I don't. Owen is a loose cannon at times. He'll always come up with something pretty fresh and different. I would be surprised. Like, Tyrone would have been so focused on that Dublin match. Like, if you were approaching Dublin and had in any way one eye on Ballybofey, I think you would have been absolutely annihilated, which would have been much more damaging in your preparations for Ballybofey. So Tyrone have played in Ballybofey many times. They haven't had many victories there, but they know what they're facing, and the dimensions of the sideline. Look, for me as a footballer, I don't think them things really matter in the cut and thrust of a championship game of this sort of size.
Yeah, for sure. It does seem like an incredibly tough place to go. Obviously, Donegal, 21 games there, unbeaten at the moment. I'm not sure, do we give that a bit more weight than the Ulster semi-final last year, where Tyrone, a lot of us forget, beat them by 9 points. They walked out the gate. I know that wasn't in McCool Park, though.
Yeah, the last year's result, I think, is very different. I think Tyrone are significantly changed this year. Donegal too, under Declan Bonner, have significantly changed. So I don't think last year's game will have a huge bearing on it. The other thing about one-sided victories in the modern game, I think they can occur without teams being too far off the mark. Just if a team gets behind and starts having to come out and chase, as Donegal did, then it just opens up and suddenly you can get beat by an absolute cricket score. So I don't think that has a big bearing. Their home record, I think, does have a decent bearing on this. I think Donegal are weakened coming into this, losing McBrearty and Owen Van Gallagher. I think that's 2 huge losses, but I think that's probably evened out by the fact that they've home advantage in Ballybofey, and they'll be hugely confident of using that home advantage. So for me, it's sort of, if them two men had been fit, Ballybofey could have been the deciding factor, but I think it's probably all evened up at this stage.
Yeah, does it change how Declan Bonner kind of views the game? Because initially you might have felt that Donegal's focus will have been on stopping Tyrone's running game, and that's almost giving yourself a sense of an inferiority complex. Whereas now, with that brilliant record at McCool Park, psychologically you feel that you're on a par with Tyrone, if not better than them, and their game plan might not be to stop Tyrone, but they might feel that Tyrone have to stop them.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I think that this game is set up to all about how Declan Bonner copes that balance. I think we know what Tyrone are going to do and what Tyrone are going to bring. They changed the game slightly against Dublin. I thought they were I think Tyrone showed how much they've advanced this year against Dublin compared to last year, where they engaged Dublin better and kept themselves in that game better for longer spells. The irony was their best spell was when, even in Mickey Hart's own words, they went for broke in the last 10 minutes and threw off the shackles a bit. How much of that was Dublin stepping off the gas, I don't know, but I think Tyrone will take good confidence from that. For Bonner, he'll know he's went with more attacking format this year. They're not dropping as fast back. They are still, like every other team in the country, getting back in numbers should they need a rise. But they're keeping more men up the pitch more often, and so it's as much how Tyrone deal with that. I think Donegal will be fairly happy. They'll work very, very hard at trying to track the Tyrone runners out of defence, but I don't think we'll see Donegal sit back too deep. I think they'll keep trying to play the way that they're playing.
And how will Tyrone go about counteracting that?
I think Tyrone will do exactly what they're doing. I think both teams will be fairly confident at this stage in their system of play. I suppose that's one of the worries, is that this game could maybe fail to live up to expectations. I suppose a lot of the football has this summer. I'm sort of half hoping that the atmosphere that's going to be in the ground, which I think is going to be incredible, and just the tension that's there will in fact make the team sort of come out of their shells a wee bit. For me, I think Tyrone will continue to sit deep and really look to punch hard on the break. The sighting of Michael Murphy is going to be a crucial factor of this, and that's where Declan Bonner probably can have most impact on Tyrone's thoughts, because you have to adapt your game to where Michael Murphy is, at least with one or two players, and your bias between attack and defence. So that is probably Declan Bonner's easiest way of influencing how Tyrone are setting up.
Yeah, and of course, famously last year, Padraig Hampsey marked Michael Murphy in that match and outscored him from defence. Like, do you expect Hampsey to drop back and mark Murphy no matter where he goes on the pitch?
I would imagine so. Whenever a pairing has worked with you before, the last thing an opponent wants to see is that same player coming back onto him again. But Murphy probably is, if anything, is playing better this year. His display in full forward against Roscommon, I suppose, reminded everybody of the talents that we all sort of know he has, but we too rarely get to see him in full flow. So for Tyrone, that would be a wee bit of a worry if he drifts into full forward. But again, McNamee has dealt with him before in there. Another big jewel is the marking of Ryan McHugh. Dublin done a brilliant job on Ryan McHugh. In the Ulster final, that last Ulster final between Tyrone and Donegal, Ryan McHugh picked up Petey Hart. But Petey Hart continued to play his defensive position. So whenever Donegal were attacking, Petey Hart dropped off and just took his position in Tyrone's defensive rearguard, leaving McHugh a free man. And in the first half, McHugh cut Tyrone to shreds, while he marked Petey man on man whenever Tyrone were attacking, and that nullified Petey. In the second half, Mickey put on, I think it was Rory Brennan, onto Ryan McHugh and nullified him. So McHugh's a key player for Donegal, and that matchup will be key, trying to keep Petey Hart free, because he's a key player for Tyrone, and trying to nullify Ryan McHugh. And I've got a feeling Brennan could be introduced early enough if he's not starting.
Okay, very interesting. Like the obvious other elements, other weapon that Donegal have with regards to the Roscommon game especially is Oran McNeilish, and you do wonder what autonomy that will give to someone like Michael Murphy. Of course, Ryan McHugh's role is quite uniform. We know what's going to happen there. It's how Tyrone counteract that. But I wonder how much of a variation we're going to get on Murphy because of McNeilish's form that has just kind of exploded into the public consciousness once again against Roscommon, and he's a real inside target man for Donegal now, that they might get away with not having Murphy in there beside him.
Yeah, Oran McNeilis inside. Like Oran McNeilis, he's a player you just love watching. He for the rest of us ordinary players, he's a player that makes you jealous because he makes it look so easy. Him being inside was sort of new to me. I'd always seen him out around the middle and admired him sort of as a playmaker, spreading passes, shooting from distance. The fact that he can be an effective target man does absolutely free up Michael Murphy to an extent, but Michael Murphy still carries a certain threat all of his own, that, you know, he's essentially unmarkable. But Tyrone haven't marked McNeilis in that new position. Then Donegal, it's the impact of Hugh McFadden and Liam McClune out around the middle, two players that have found great form. And with them sort of four big men, they've sort of midfield nailed down and they've a bit of a threat inside. And I suppose that's why Declan Bonner feels he has a wherewithal this year to go with a more attacking front, because he can sort of keep strong in midfield and keep a bit of a target inside. So that's, again, to the earlier point about Tyrone's victory last year. I think Donegal are a different side from last year, and will pose a much stronger test this year to Tyrone.
And give me a sense of the rivalry. Obviously, you know, you've played in many of them. A brother of mine was at the Donegal Roscommon game, and he was heading up to Sligo after, and they pulled in to watch the Dublin Tyrone game, and some of the Donegal fans pulled in, and they were actually singing "Come on, you boys in blue" in the bar. So obviously they pinned their support where they wanted it. Like, is it as intense as you've ever seen? I remember being up there a number of years ago for News Talk, and it was absolutely savage stuff. Like, I mean, and you could feel the tension in the ground. How's it going to pan out?
Was that match up in Ballybuffet, Anthony?
Yeah.
I was doing ready with that match, and the tension and the physicality of that game was something else. The Tyrone Donegal rivalry has really come out of really nowhere. The famous comment, and I heard it, and it was in McGinnis's book, I think, about racing McManaman, a non-game in Eden Dork. It was a sort of a secondary pitch in Tyrone because the main pitch was I think waterlogged, and we were beating Donegal, and there was a wee bit of tension, and Racey says to them, you'll never amount to nothing, is your chokers as such. And I remember being in earshot of it, and you sort of always knew Donegal's talent, and I sort of winced. I thought, Christ, Ricey, don't tempt fate there.
Don't poke the bear.
But as far as you know, that comment went back into the Donegal dressing room and was like a catalyst for McGinnis's whole turnaround of that squad, and then they changed. Then they beat Mickey Hart in Championship 3-4 times in a row, which simply no other team has done, and that really hurt. Then Tyrone eventually, with changing their whole style, Tyrone sort of adopted that Donegal style brought in by McGinnis, got to parity and managed to turn them over in a hugely tense Ulster final. So yeah, there's plenty of tension there. Just McMahon's battle with Michael Murphy stays strong in Donegal's minds. Remember that day up in Ballybuffet? Yeah. That was a real marking card, because for me, Justy didn't do anything wrong, but he brought a absolutely to the line and maybe tiptoeing over at the odd time competitiveness, and shut down Donegal's main man. And Tyrone were proud of Justy, and Donegal were raging for Murphy, and that's just one of the many wee things along the line. Stevie O'Neill got landed on his ass by one of the McGee's coming out, and again, Steve is our star player now. He just got caught flat-footed. But them wee things, like the physicality of that game, the tension of it, it's just massive. The problem was with the Ulster final end, which was, I think, maybe a year or two after that game, and it was set up to be a classic, and it ended up being a complete chess match for maybe 60 minutes. And only in the last 10 minutes did the game suddenly burst to life. Murphy missed a free at one end to go 2 up. Then Petey Hart and Sean Kavanagh scored outrageous scores to get thrown into the lead. And the game was phenomenal in that last 10 minutes. I suppose it's all about this modern football. If these two teams just went toe-to-toe, it would be phenomenal, and it would be too close to call. What I fear we'll get is more of a really structured game, and it'll still be too close to call. But yeah, the tension and the rivalry, and the way this game's set up, this is an old-fashioned Ulster Championship match with a path to an All-Ireland semi-final. On the better side of the draw, you're avoiding Dublin. So for both of these teams, they know that winning this game gives them a realistic shot at the All-Ireland title. Donegal's Ulster title won't count. And it's been played in a small, tight provincial ground with, it was sold out, I think, at the start of the week. The county board issued notes to clubs that there will not be any more tickets available. So it's going to be a phenomenal atmosphere. I can't wait, but it'll not be for the faint-hearted.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be whoever holds the nerve at the end of the day is going to win this one. Like, I presume the game you're talking about there, Moyles, is 2013, the one in McCool Park, the preliminary game. Yeah. And like, obviously famously that day as well, and you had Niall Morgan's curious relationship with the local crowd in Donegal, and obviously he was trying to go on the front foot there, you felt, trying to G up his own crowd, and when you look at the results, you could say it kind of backfired, but ultimately it's hard to know how these players will react psychologically. You can either have the fire of Niall Morgan, or you could easily see somebody choking. And when you talk about targeting players, you can be sure and certain Mickey Hart is going to be picking out Ryan McHugh as the person that they could potentially wind up.
Ryan McHugh will probably get a bit of winding up, but possibly the likes of Jamie Brennan. It's usually the fresh fish, so to speak.
It's like prison rules.
Throwing up a few new players, the likes of Michael McKiernan, the likes of Frank Burns, who's the first time in sort of this type of environment. Jamie Brennan of Donegal with a few others too, and them young players of Donegal choked against Tyrone last year. You know, that was the big thing. Your Kieran Thompsons, your Langans, them boys absolutely failed to turn up in Clonus last year. My fear is with my Tyrone hat firmly on. My fear is that them boys are 1 year older, will have been stung by last year's non-performance, and will up their level significantly. And with all of that young talent that Donegal have, and again in that safety of being at home in Ballybuffet, I think Donegal's performance will significantly up. So it is Tyrone going to be really, really tested here.
Are they going to win it though, Donegal?
I think the loss of McBrearty and the loss of Owen Van Gallagher is massive for them. I think it's a pity for any football supporter. I think Donegal at full strength were a very exciting prospect this year, not just for this match, but potentially what they could do in competing with the likes of Dublin. The loss of them two players is massive at both ends of the field. They were absolutely critical to Donegal's new style of play. I think with that damage, I think this is a huge opportunity for Tyrone to go there and beat Donegal in Ballybofey, which would be a massive psychological blow for Donegal and a huge cap for Tyrone. So for me, I'm going to, bias obviously included, go with Tyrone by 1 to spare.
Right, okay. Well, we look forward to it, and enjoy the match, and we'll chat to you again next week, no doubt.
Thanks, man.